Welcome back to Startup RealTalk, where we unpack the real, unpolished truth behind scaling companies, leading people, and building the future of work. I am your host, Kristina Karcic-Ehret, and today we're diving into technical support teams and how to build a strong culture that drives performance and a sense of community. If you are in tech, you understand the importance of technical support teams, but this is possibly one of the hardest jobs in tech. Not the technical component, it's always being on the receiving side of problems. It's easy to get discouraged, frustrated, and honestly, oftentimes burnt out. Today, we're addressing how to avoid this and build a sustainable and strong culture within the teams. We are fortunate to be sitting here today with Ronen Avidor, a seasoned global leader in customer support, field engineering, and solutions engineering. He has over 2 decades of experience in being able to scale high performing technical teams, built customer obsessed cultures, and created global playbooks that drive consistent execution. Ronen is known for turning support organizations into strategic engines by leveraging data, AI, and operational excellence to elevate customer experience and revenue impact. Happy to have you on the show today.
Hey, Christina, thank you for having me on the show and for the warm introduction. Much appreciated.
Awesome. First and foremost, let's start with what are your foundational pillars of a high performing support culture in technical organizations?
Good question. I think when I look at support team, I look at like three core pillars, right? Operational rigor, transparent communication, and growth-centric mindset. Team that thrives when expectations are clear, codified, performance are insights that are democratized, and leader model a commitment to continued improvement. When these pillars align together, we create an organization that has a predictable outcome, right? Accelerate time to resolution and deliver a differentiated customer experience.
Amazing. I couldn't agree more with you. Now let's take a moment and just jump into why does culture matter so much?
I think culture acts as the backbone of every high performance support organization. It actually influences how team triage tickets that are coming in, collaborate, escalate when needed, learn, and ultimately drive value to customer. In a technical ecosystem where complexity increases rapidly and customer expectation rise even faster, culture is not a soft initiative. It's a competitive advantage.
It really is. And as you mentioned, in a technical environment, again, as I'll mention earlier, where you're in a position where you're constantly hearing the worst, it
Mhm.
is so important to create the strong culture so that you keep engagement up, you keep
Yeah.
retention up, right? And that's
Mhm.
all part of the pillars. So I'm really excited to jump further into this for us to be able to learn from you. So we want to first start with the foundational pillar of high performing support cultures. Can you dive deeper into that?
Yeah, and I think you touched a good point. Often I see organization treat support as like the problem for all the issues, right? Anything that happens, it's a support issue, right? Customers is not not happy, it's a support issue, right? Product is not working, a support issue. So I think building those culture and putting in those methodologies, I think would help internally within the team, but also externally for the organization to kind of appreciate, how support operates and the hard job that they're doing, and that that support is actually on the same team as as the sales, product, and engineering. So I think the first item that I want to look at is operational urgency, right? When you build a high performance team, that operate with clarity, discipline, and consistency. You want to define clear SLAs, right? What is the framework? What is the escalation path? How do we communicate with each other? What is the workflow, the ticketing workflow? And you want to create a predictable outcome. You want to set performance metrics that are aligned with customer value, like first response, right? Every company has a SLA, like how soon are you response to a ticket based on a priority, time the resolution, your backlog, how much you're willing to absorb a backlog, and sentiment score, right? That would be your CSAT or NPS. Team that operates with cadence, daily stand-up, weekly operational reviews, and monthly performance deep dives. These are the team that has confidence and customers' reassurance.
Absolutely. I mean, you said a lot of things right there that are fundamental and honestly often overlooked, right? And what you're talking about is setting the foundation and ensuring that they have the right setup to be successful. And that is absolutely critical, especially in this particular group, because you know way better than anyone else. Without these, I would want to say guardrails, what ends up
Yep.
happening is there's no clarity when something goes wrong. And it's not about the blame game by any means. But what ends up happening is without your operational structure, then we know that it goes back and forth between support and engineering, and
Right.
everybody's pointing the fingers, blaming one another. So at some point, to a certain point, you do want healthy friction. But unfortunately, without what you put in place, it becomes unhealthy really, really quickly. And then exactly tying it back to culture, now you have a group that's normally feels the pain. Now they're feeling the pain of their own organization, right? So
Right.
I love how you phrase that. I love that you put that importance on setting that infrastructure early on so that you really do, number one, you're creating a great culture, but you're also creating the right mix for sustainability and growth as well.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned like the blame game, right? So usually when I come in to a team, like I look at the ticketing workflow, right? Like explain to me how you manage, what is the workflow and what are the steps to kind of manage the ticket. And then every step has a touching point, has clarity, has an SLA, and then has follow up, right? So everybody else, like the sales team, the account team, product team or engineering, everybody else knows exactly what's happening. So when you look at the ticket, you can see at what stage the ticket is and what's happening with the ticket. So no need to go back and forth and kind of like bother the support team or ask questions. You just look at the ticket. It's very readable. You can see all the steps. You can get a summary of all the steps, and you can see what's happening and what's the status of each ticket. And that leads me kind of like to the second point, which is transparent communication, right? When you're managing a ticket, right, you want to make sure that you communicate internally with the account team, with engineering, is what's happening to the ticket, when is the next update, and what are we doing with regards to the ticket, right? So leaders that are sharing performance data openly, everyone sees what's working and what's the bottlenecks, right? There's no surprises. If a customer doesn't get an update, there'll be some kind of an alert that going on internally to let the support team know, hey, you need to handle this customer, you need to kind of send them an update. But also the account team, hey, we're still working on the ticket, we will update the customer in X hours, days, depending on the priority. That feedback loop with product engineering and CS are institutionalized and not head off, right? So you have like AI automation, you have some kind of a process where everybody gets notified what's happening with the ticket. So there's no surprises, right? They don't get a call from the customer that says, hey, what's happening? Team celebrates win publicly and manage escalation constructively, right? Focusing on root cause analysis rather than blame, right? So if we did something good and we helped the customers, like celebrate this. Let the team know that, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. But also if something happens that we need to do some feedback or some root cause analysis and RCA, right? Like focus on like what happened, what do we need to do to improve, and not like this is your fault, my fault. Hopefully that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And I want to unpack a couple of things you said that are really important. I want to double down on. The first one that you talk about, right, is transparency. So when you're building a culture, and I'm going to emphasize this, culture is not fluff. It is real and it has
Yep.
real impact when done right. So when we go back and we talk about transparency is absolutely key for trust. And you can't have a strong culture without the trust. So I
Yep.
love that aspect. And then also you have clarity in what you're owning and how far that goes, right? And
Yep.
the ownership is the other piece you mentioned. And I love this because, I've been part of organizations where support is managing the customer through a Slack channel.
Right.
Can you even imagine when I heard this, I died. I was like, wait, our support team gets up and they can have anywhere from 100 to 150 Slack messages they have to go through, right?
Yep.
So this goes back. I know it seems like almost like common sense, but it really is not. And the sooner you
Yep.
build this, the better that you have the internal culture and team performing. And most importantly, who doesn't want exceptional customer experience? And this is a critical aspect of it, right? Because regardless of how strong your product is, it will go wrong, right? There
Yeah,
will be.
yeah.
I love that perspective that you brought that into it. And then most importantly, you mentioned about recognition. And
Mhm.
as leaders, and especially leaders at high growth, where you have a ton of stuff on your plate, right? The
Yep.
recognition piece can sometimes go underneath everything because you're like, oh, we'll get to that. No, again, as a core element of culture is being able to recognize that so that people are like, yes, I want to service the client. Yes, I want to meet these standards, if not exceed. So I absolutely not only love, but absolutely support what you're doing. And it's kind of crazy to think a lot of organizations are not operating this way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally agree with you. And I think to add to that, I think like if we try to summarize, the 2 points that we mentioned, you want to create some kind of a safe environment. The outcome is creating a safe environment where people feel informed, heard, and empowered, right, to make decisions, right? We're human beings, right? We're not going to get it right all the time, but if we get, if we have the opportunity to be empowered and make decisions and learn from that and feel safe that it's not going to go against you, right? I think that's creating a really productive, safe environment where people are going to excel and thrive, right?
Exactly.
Because they feel safe. Like, hey, I have some idea. I have something that I want to try with the customer, right? Don't block it, right? Let's empower it. Hey, make the decisions. You are managing that ticket. If you made a decision to go that route, own it, right? If you made a mistake, it's fine. You go back and fix it, right? But like feel safe that you can actually make that decision, take some risk, right? Um, but have the ability to excel and kind of like manage your own ticket, right, and not have to be micromanaged with somebody else, right? Because then create the environment where people just feel safe.
Absolutely. And, I couldn't agree more with you. But one of the things that you're saying that honestly sometimes I get a lot of pushback on is creating that psychologically safe environment. And the
Mhm.
one thing that, if you don't mind, I'll elaborate on that you mentioned everything. In addition to that, you will build an innovative organization because people can challenge one another
Right.
respectfully. And you and I had the amazing opportunity to do this at Sysons and see
Exactly.
what this actually looks like. And, it's not just us saying this. We actually got recognized externally. But even in addition to that, we actually brought in a consultant to assess, like, what is it that we built? And as you know, one of the cool things is that they came back and they said a unique thing about your culture is no matter where we went in the world, everybody led with the we. And it goes back to what you're saying, right? And at the end of it, a lot of the practices you put in place for your particular team drove incredible customer success, right? And that was the one thing we were extremely proud of is the fact you could go anywhere and the customers loved us,
Right.
right? And so everything you're talking about, I wanted to emphasize that because these aren't just words on a paper, they're actions. And with those actions, you can see the tangible results, as you did with what you created at Tyson's.
Yeah, and I think just to add on that, like creating those playbooks and creating those processes internally. I don't know if you remember back then during COVID, we actually hired and built a team in APAC for the sales engineering, right? So out of like
That's right.
Australia and out of Singapore, by having those playbooks and workflows, it was we couldn't travel, right? We couldn't see them face to face, but we were able to hire them, make them part of the team, and make them feel safe that they can execute on that playbook, on those workflow, without being judged or anything, or without being like micromanaged, right? Like they felt safe that they can, hey, I've got the expertise, I know the playbook, now let me just go execute, trust me that I can execute on that. And I think that really helped us to kind of onboard those people and make them feel like they're part of the team, even that nobody actually saw them face to face, or nobody could travel and get offsite or do some kind of like a workshop or something.
That's absolutely it. And you know what? I'm going to give us both a pat on the back for that because as many organizations really struggled during COVID and bringing the culture
Mhm.
together. I'm really proud that as a team, we were able to come together and we actually got really high, I want to say remarks, but we got really high scores on how we handled it and that we put the human first. And
Right.
like you said, you wouldn't have been able to do what you did at that intent, not only the intensity of it, but also we went from a very in office work culture to remote, and being able to spin that up with that shift is not easy. So, yeah, it goes back. I love that you're giving these tangible examples of how you win with these playbooks.
Yeah. And I think like that helped us to go from like, in office to remote because we had all those playbooks, right? So
Absolutely.
literally just executing that didn't really matter where you are, in office, not in office. Like we had the team meetings, the one-on-one, right? The feedback loop, right? Like all of that existed within the workflow that made people feel like, okay, so I'm not in office, I'm working from home. It doesn't really matter. Like it's the same process, right? Um,
Absolutely.
which leads me to like the third point that I want to discuss, which is growth-centric mindset, right? Like when you're building world-class support or pre-sales or solution engineering team, you want to nurture the continuous improvement, right? So professional development, right? Like show people how you can, show them the path um, to be, to excel and to learn and to develop, right? Um, Agents are encouraged to upskills on product tooling and soft skill, right? So something like LinkedIn Learning, if you open that for them and let them, take some courses online and get some certification, that really helps, build the skill sets within the team, but also gives people the ability to enhance their own personal skill sets, right? So they can take it, when they move on or when they move to the next role or the next company, right? They have that skill set on hand. Knowledge sharing is rewarded to reinforce collective intelligence and part of each other's personal goal, right? So at Dremio, what we did, part of the things we did is we leverage an AI knowledge base searching tool, right? But in order for that to be successful, you needed to have the knowledge base. You needed people
Yes.
to share that knowledge base and create that knowledge base within the company, right? So part of the ticketing workflow, what we did is we made it as part of closing the ticket or post closing the ticket. You had to contribute a knowledge base on that specific issue that you resolved. By doing that, we've increased our own internal knowledge base. But then the sharing, by doing that, you're actually sharing your experience on that particular issue or topic to the rest of the team because now it's searchable through the AI tool, right? And people love doing it. They love kind of like contributing all those knowledge base and say, hey, I got this new one I'm going to contribute, and people can you take a look at it, can you kind of like verify it, proofread it, or things like that. But like creating that environment where people feel safe that, hey, I'm actually helping my team, I'm actually helping us to be more productive by contributing to to my organization and not holding back all that knowledge within them and protecting it, right? And creating that culture where people feel safe to do it. I think that's, if anybody creates that culture, you got a winning team there.
100%. And, again, like I always do, I'm going to go back to some of the key elements that you
Mhm.
mentioned, which really resonate, I believe, with myself as well as the audience is first and foremost, you cannot effectively grow an organization if you and the team do not have a growth mindset. Now, one of the things that, and I'm going to say something, and it's not meant to apply to everyone, but it's just speaking in general terms, right? Technical personas have the natural tendency to have a fixed mindset. It doesn't come naturally. Again, this is a generalization. It's based
Mhm.
on a persona. Not everybody that's technical falls into this immediately, right?
Right.
It's just one of the natural pieces that they typically just fall back on. So it's really critical in technical environments to really ensure that you build that type of growth mindset, but not only build it, but support it in like what you're saying, right? Ensuring that they have learning and development. And honestly, in our world right now, if you're not investing this and investing in your teams, you will become stale quickly, right? Because the technology is changing faster than any other time in our lifetime.
Right.
So I love the fact that you really invest in your employees, well, which will only make them stronger for you, right?
Yep.
But at some point they are going to leave to go somewhere else, and you want to make sure that they're set up for success. And
Exactly.
then, right? And then in addition, the other thing that you said, which I think is equally, is the fact of knowledge sharing, right? And it, to me, that goes back to recognizing your
Mhm.
employees, because there are times, yes, that you have to get external expertise to come in
Yep.
internal to teach, but oftentimes your people possess that knowledge, and people take I want to say gratitude, but also what's the word that I'm looking for? People take pride. I apologize.
Right.
People take pride in being able to come in and share with their teammates. And through that, you're creating collaboration, you're creating trust. People then know, hey, if I'm struggling on this, I know who to go to, as opposed
Exactly.
to trying to guess, or honestly, you know way better than I do. Then they just internalize it. And then hence where the connected to performance comes, right? So
Yep.
without everything you described, this entire presentation, like conversation, but even more so like right now, without those pieces, you're not going to drive high performing teams, which every organization wants.
Yeah, and I think like nowadays, right, like everything moves fast, right? You get like more customers, more issues. Everybody is expecting you to do more, right, with the same amount of resources, right? So creating that safe environment where you can share knowledge in the form of a knowledge-based article, implement like a smart AI searching tool. Like people now have the knowledge at hand. It's handy. You just type in the question and you get the summary of what's happening and what the resolution is, right? And I think a high performance team, right? Like if you create that culture, then that as a team, as a whole, right? They're going to perform much better. You're going to see a nice improvement in all the KPI. And people also, because you work in a team, like you're a 24/7 global team, right? Like people take time off, people are super busy with other things, right? Sometimes you don't have the time for people to actually get on the phone and kind of like guide people through a resolution, right? But if you have that in the form of knowledge base, like an AI search, maybe implement some chatbot or automated, reply for something like low or medium tickets, right? Like you creating that environment where people are focused on what they need to do and how they can move the needle with resolving customers' issue, right? That mindset, right, transforms support from reactive function into a proactive engine that scales expertise. And that's
Yes.
very important.
It really is. And the one thing that I do want to touch on real quick, and I want to get your perspective, I can talk about it, but I'm not the SME, so I will shut up. Is you touched on metrics, which is really, really key. And everything you're doing is in enabling that. Do you mind? I think it's really important for our audience. I think they would want to learn more. Do you mind just touching on that a little further?
Yeah, so I think usually support team they work really hard, and even when you create the ticketing workflow and the knowledge base and everything, right? You got to make sure that they have access to the data, they have access to the metric, right? So being a data-driven organization really helped me scale up the business and make sure everybody owns their own business, whether you're a team manager, whether you're a support agent managing your ticket, right? By becoming data obsessed, right, or data driven organization, everybody has access to the metrics that drive support, whether it's first response, time to resolution, first day resolution, your CSAT, what's your backlog, how many ticketing are you resolving every day, what's your ticket volume, what is the breakdown of the ticket per product. We see a specific issue, right? Is there an issue in specific, a customer, right, or suite of product, or types of customers, right? Like having all that information available, ready for people to look, that clears, that makes it, transparent, right? And it clears any assumptions or, anything people don't have to guess, right? Like I can just come start my day, log into my dashboard, kind of see what's happening with my team. Or if I'm an agent, I can see like, hey, these are all my tickets. These are the things that I need to focus on today because they're getting close and I need to answer. Having all that strategy set up right? Makes, clears a lot of like unknown and clear and also reduces a lot of friction that we have between people in the team because it's available, it's there, there's transparency, we're not hiding anything, right? And our conversations are based on those KPIs and data, right? Instead of guessing. So when I walk into, like, let's say my team meeting, which are the managers of the team, right? I look at the dashboard. I look at what happened in the past week. How did we perform? Did we actually, reduce the backlog? How many tickets we handled? What is the CSAT? And then to see kind of like, do we have any red flags or anything that we need to address, right? Do we see a trend in some product area, then we need to go back to engineering and kind of like, raise it with them, right? Do we see an issue with a specific customers that we need to go back to the account team and says like, hey, like we've seen some trends with these customers, they might need some more help. Maybe you want to get PS involved, right? Or maybe you want to get some help, trying to implement this new use case for them, or something like that, right? Again, closing that loop and being data driven and making that available as well as transparency. I think that kind of like help you build that team, right? Again, building a high performance support culture is not accidental, right? It's engineered. You got to engineer it, right? It's built on structures, process, open communication, and we talked about a lot in today's session, and commitment to continuous learning, right? When all those pillars, right, work in harmony, the support function becomes strategic differentiator, right? Elevating both customer outcome and internal performances benchmark.
I love it. And that's exactly it. You're creating clarity by putting together these processes that will eliminate, as you mentioned, that friction that exists in every organization. But that friction will lead to the team being unproductive, for the
Right.
customer's voice. And this is all what you said, the
Mhm.
customer's voice not getting where it needs to get to, right? So it
Mhm.
really hurts the product, hurts product development. So, as you said, I think one of the most critical things you said is that culture is built with intent, right?
Right.
And if you want to drive high performance, you need a structure. And you're not talking about a process just for a process. You're creating a framework and guardrails so that your teams can be successful and, most importantly, be the very best of who they are, creating that safe, psychologically safe environment where people bring their true, authentic self to thrive. And with all of those elements, I just love how it comes together. And, I'm privileged. I got to see you build this firsthand. So I know this isn't just words on a paper, this is what you're capable of building.
Exactly. When it comes together, I mean, it's like the everybody's happy, right?
Yes.
I've seen like part of what we did as a team, or what I've asked my manager is like once a week you have to choose some incident, something that happened, right, and give a shout out to one member of your team, right? Make it public so people actually take pride of what they do, and people see that, hey, we see you, we appreciate what you're doing. That's the culture we want to create, right? And it goes back to what we said, right? Create a safe environment where people feel valued. They feel like people are hearing them, and they have the opportunity to thrive, excel, right, and grow, right? By creating that type of culture, I think you're on a path of building an A team.
Exactly. So I really want to thank you. And before we close this out, I really want to go high level for a second
Okay.
and just address our audience, in particular founders. And what I want to say is that when you're building an organization, you need someone like Ronen. And the reason why you need someone like that, besides everything we talked about, which are all important, at the end of the day, you have a board to report to. And just think about how amazing it is when you're creating your slides and you can lead with clarity and lead with, this is what our customers want, this is what we're hearing, this is our error rate. I mean, think about how much the board is going to get behind you by being able to provide that through the playbook that Ronen created. Never mind, at the end of the day, when you talk about the people metrics and you see that one of the most critical departments in the organization that typically has high turnover, will not. And most importantly, and I know, Ronen, this is something we didn't touch on, but I think is critical, you prepare them for their next opportunity. So you help growth organizations develop their talent. So now you have somebody who understands the customer's voice, now transfer to another part of the organization, providing extensive value, right? So
Mm.
I just love everything you said. And again, for the founders watching this is what your organization needs. And if you don't have this, I highly recommend that you reach out to Ronen so that he can help you.
Appreciate that, Christina. Yeah, and I think just to sum it up, right, like world-class support organization, right, they embed themselves, right, into the product engineering, customer success workflow, right? When insights flow bi-directionally, team closes feedback loop faster, right, reduces systematic escalation and deliver high customer satisfaction, right? Like that alignment that we talked about during the session, right? Transform support from a transactional cost center into a strategic intelligence engine that informs roadmap, UX, go-to-market strategy, they even potentially create leads and upsells opportunity to the account team, right? Nobody really thinks about support as a lead generation, but support has so much information on the customers. They hear it, firsthand, right? Like, hey, as an example, we have an increased use case. We're now running, X more number of tasks on the product, right? That is a really good information to send over to the account team as an example, right? Like, hey, this customer has a new use case, right? Or like they're trying to like upload more load on the system, right? You should have a conversation with them, trying to understand like what's happening, right? So all I'm saying, like, there's so many, like when you implement those playbooks, transparency, right, and people feel safe, right? The sky's the limit, right? There's so many things that you can leverage support now that the engine is running, right? That machine
Yes.
is running smoothly.
Okay, so thank you, Ronan. I really appreciate you. And for those of you watching, apologies. You saw me change screens just simply because my battery was running low. Ronan, if you don't mind, can you please share with the audience as to where they can find you best?
Yeah, so happy to have a conversation. Reach out, find me on LinkedIn, DM me on LinkedIn. Be happy to speak and geek about support, customer success, pre-sale, solution engineering, and how to build like amazing cultures that thrives and excel and work together in harmony as a winning team.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today and all your insights. So please remember to follow, like, and we'll see you next time on Startup Real Talk.